Hello, beautiful thought roomies, and welcome back to the show. If you're new here, I'm your host, Hallie Rose. Thanks for joining us today. Last episode, I announced in my intro that I was opening up 5 spaces for one-on-one coaching and mentorship with me. And as of this episode, 4 out of 5 of those spots have been filled. I still have 1 space left for one incredible person who is wanting to dive in and take up the reins on this opportunity to work with me deeply on busting through those patterns, those stories, those things that are keeping you stuck. Sometimes when we begin this process of awakening, we start to slowly become illuminated to the things in our lives that feel like a record on repeat. So we may find ourselves in a relationship where something about that relationship bothers us, triggers us, hits our stuff, irritates us in a certain way, and we end it. And then we find ourselves in another relationship. And yet we still are noticing some of the same things, hitting some of our same stuff. And what we begin to realize over time is that it's not the person or the relationship, the situation, it's us. The same is true with if you're the type of person who finds themselves constantly coming up with new ideas, great ideas, amazing things they want to create in the world, and yet they never execute. Or you execute, but you only get things to this middle level, and then you stop, and then you start something new, and things never really go to where you want them to. You know, look back on your life, take a little canvas of, okay, what are the things, if I zoom out, if I was somebody else looking at my life, what are the things that I would see myself repeating? That's where the gold is, and that's what this deep work with me is all about, is diving into these stories, rewriting narratives, reprogramming our minds to create lasting change. So if this interests you, I have 1 space left until my roster is full until December. I want you to email me. I want you to push past any resistance that you may have, any questions about whether or not you really need this, and just explore the possibility of what it feels like to lean into the sharp bits and to say yes to the opportunity of exploring it. So if you are interested in that, I want you to email me hello@hallierose.com. So that's HALLIEROSE.com, hallierose.com. This episode is one of the last episodes in the Soltara series that I recorded down in Costa Rica this past winter while I was there living at this beautiful medicine center, working with ayahuasca. Lived there for 3 months while I was launching this podcast. So this interview was done much earlier in the year, before the world started to shift and change in its drastic ways. And I was lucky enough to sit down with one of our fan favorites, Kyle Buller, who, if you listen to this podcast, you know he was on episode 6 telling his incredible near-death experience story as a teenager when he fell on the snowboarding hill and had to be airlifted to the hospital. And he describes the sensation of leaving his body. You definitely want to go listen to that episode if you haven't already. But it was such a pleasure to have Kyle back. And we actually were recording this on site in Costa Rica the night after Kyle finished his very first experiences with ayahuasca, which I thought was so neat because here's somebody who is the co-founder of Psychedelics Today and helps with integration, has a great deal of experience with plant medicines. And I got to speak with them the day after their first experience with what I believe is one of the most powerful plant medicines on this planet. Super cool. So on that note too, Soltara Healing Center is back open for bookings, and they're going to be filling up really quickly because a lot of people have been waiting for them to reopen. So if you're interested and you've been feeling the call to ayahuasca, I encourage you to explore them as one of your options. Obviously, I have a little bit of a bias because that's where I've done 13 ceremonies. And if you are interested, you decide after some research that's the route for you. I have a discount code for our listeners only, and it is, in all capitals, Thought Room. And you can get yourself $200 off of any ayahuasca retreat at Soltara when you tell them that the Thought Room sent you. So, without further ado, my friends, I cannot wait to share this episode with you. Please step back into the Thought Room with myself and Kyle Buller. Like we just keep running into each other sort of all over the world.
I know. That's what I said earlier. It's like we keep just having these synchronistic paths crossing. So it's nice.
Yeah. It's when I found out you were coming here, I was like, yes, this is perfect. Because we just got so much good feedback from your episode here before. People were really moved by your near-death experience story and what you've created with Psychedelics Today. So it's really cool to be on the ground here with you in Costa Rica at Soltara Healing Center and get to talk to you again.
Yeah.
This morning, I had the pleasure of being in the sharing circle with your group here this week. And you said something that really sparked my attention because you were speaking about your near-death experience. And I'm sure you've told that story numerous times over the years. And this often happens when we tell our stories often, especially if there's a big event that's such a cornerstone to our life. It almost takes on this different essence or like a personality of its own. These stories become so deeply ingrained into what we're identifying with. And I want you to take the reins on this, but it sounded like some of the pieces surrounding that were fluctuating or shifting a little bit for you this week.
Totally. Yeah. I kind of dove in and just experienced something completely new that I haven't experienced before. And I'm just laughing internally right now because and externally, yeah. But when you said, you've told this story multiple times and it's taken on a personality of its own, that's so true. And last night I was deep in the medicine and I was on the star deck and I kind of brought it up because I just kept talking about dying last night. I was in the medicine for a long time last night. Decided to take a second dose since I wasn't feeling anything, and it just started kicking off super late. But I was trying to put the story together and tell somebody in this, like just deep in the medicine, and it was so it was so hard. Like I was just like, I don't even know if this is the right story I'm supposed to be telling right now. And it just totally like felt like I was not connected to it at all. And I felt like I was like making things up.
Almost like it was coming from another life or just,
Yeah, like it almost like didn't happen or I couldn't remember all the pieces. And then it was funny this morning, somebody asked me about it. And I went right back into how I normally tell it. So it was interesting exploring that story while in the medicine and trying to verbalize it. it did change in quality where I was like, whoa, what is going on here? But to backtrack, like before that actually happened, after I took the second dose, part of my intention going in, I asked Grandmother Moon, we had this full moon lunar eclipse. I said, with the illumination, can you help illuminate a path forward for me? And just maybe show me where maybe I should be heading, or maybe something new to take on. And so, it's interesting setting intentions with psychedelics and plant medicines, because you start with one thing, it comes. I'm just left with more questions than actual answers at times, because it just like takes you through this journey and you're trying to make sense of it and go, oh, what the hell's going on here? But I started to relive my near-death experience during this session. And I had this flashback of laying in the CAT scan machine. And from what I remember, it was peaceful. Like I was just slowly slipping away. It was very psychedelic. I was... from that experience, I remember I was going back home to the stars, and it was just very peaceful. But during this experience, I went into my body and I started to release trauma around like my scar tissue and all this stuff I've been holding like down in my root chakra. And, with all this scar tissue, it like kind of pulls, like I have like this adhesions too, I guess, from the surgery. And, I'm going on like 16 years with this stuff. And I just felt the trauma that I'm still holding in my body from having emergency surgery. And I went through this experience of being afraid to die. And I felt like an animal just sitting there shaking. And I remember like I was just allowing this shaking to happen. And it felt really uncomfortable. And it just like happened all in this area where I was like cut open and where I hold all this tension, because I had to like learn how to walk again. I had to learn how to breathe again. Like when you have your whole stomach cut open like that, like, it was hard. Like you're using muscles, like trying to retrain all those muscles. And when you're traumatized like that, and you have such a big surgery, like it was scary to use my core, because I thought I was going to rip open my stomach again, especially in the early like beginning of like when I had all the staples in, I was healing. Like I was afraid to like, just push on my stomach. And I think over time that fear has like it's my sense of normalcy. Like, so I use my core in such a different way because of that trauma, I guess, of being like cut open and trying to just like train that area. But I was just laying there and I was just shaking, and I was just doing this shivering breathing. Like I was just, and I could feel that coldness seep back into me. And I just felt like I was dying again. And I was like, I am fucking terrified. And whenever I think back about the experience, I was terrified up for a moment. Like I remember when I was in the first aid, and with this psychedelic experience, who knows, maybe I had the vision of being in the CAT scan machine, but it also could have been the trauma leading up to it that I was releasing. Because when I was at the first aid station, I was terrified. Like when they told me you had internal injuries, the first thing that came in
was on the ski hill?
Ski hill, yeah. So they brought me down. I was in the first aid station, and they just said, your ribs are fine. There's no bruising. Nothing seems cracked. But we think you have internal injuries. And at that moment, I just remember saying, oh shit, I'm going to die tonight. And I was afraid at that point. Like that really kind of was like, this is scary. Like I started praying to God, it's like, I don't want to die. But all that faded by the time I got to the hospital. So in this journey, like I went back and experienced the fear of being so young and coming so close to dying, and just how I've been holding that into my body. So it was deeply, deeply somatic and very cathartic at the same time. And just like almost like this part of the story that I've just totally forgot about. So coming from like a somatic background, like it's so interesting how psychedelics can help us tap into our bodies and tap into these muscle memories and these different ways that we hold ourselves. And, when we're able to clear that, I mean, I think real healing can really start to happen. I mean, it's going to take a lot more work, like I definitely need to probably go to massage and really get this stuff broken up, or physical therapy and really work with it. But I mean, just showing you the insights into maybe how to start working with this stuff and how to release it from your body.
Speaking of your somatic background, this is really fascinating. I'm wondering, when you're in the psychedelic space and you have the awareness that a trauma has rooted itself somewhere somatically, what tools or language do you have for identifying that, assessing it, and then moving through it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, so for me, having my background in breathwork, I mean, breathwork is just so crucial during this stuff, So for example, as this was coming on, I didn't know what was going on. I mean, I was space traveling. I was like jumping through dimensions and like all the fractal patterns. And I'm watching like the serpent come in and do this DNA healing. And I'm watching like all these insects like try to heal my body. And that's weird, right? And you're like, what the hell is going on in here? And when that memory came up of like kind of dying, I felt a pain, like I could feel all the tension like contract in my stomach. And so I breathed into it and said, I asked, I was like, what does this need right now? And so tuning into the body and saying like, what does this want to do right now? I could have kept breathing into it, but there was also a sense of, how can I let my body re-experience whatever's going on, and completely surrendering to your body. And just like, for me, like it's tough to surrender and just let your body shake. It's like, it's scary. You're like, am I just doing this? Like, this feels weird, to just completely let your body surrender to movements that might make you feel uncomfortable. So, for me, it's like breath work. And really tuning into the body and expressing it. Yeah.
This reminds me of the practice of RAIN. Have you heard that acronym before?
No.
And it's sometimes actually offered, I think they offer it here just as another tool for, I believe I've heard the facilitators talk about it, but I first learned about it from this podcast I always talk about, which is the Tara Brach podcast. She's a Buddhist American psychologist. And the process of RAIN stands for recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. So in the psychedelic space, or really in any, because when she talks about it, it's not in the context of psychedelics, it's in the context of managing our emotions and our feelings throughout the day and, waking mindfulness. And so when a feeling comes up, particularly in this context within the body, to recognize where it is, to maybe characterize it a little bit. You and I have talked about this before, I believe, but like, does it have a temperature? Is it cold? Is it contracted? Is it warm? Is it burning? Is it pulsing? Does it feel electric? Kind of just recognizing it. Where is it localized? And then allowing it. That's, for me personally, sometimes the hardest one when you tend to be a little bit of a control freak in some areas of your life, or a perfectionist, and something astonishing or frightening in your case is occurring. And with the case of psychedelics, it tends to heighten things.
Yeah.
So you're feeling electrical pulses in your stomach and you're going, wow, this is intense. And you have to allow it. And then investigating, kind of just doing what you did and say, what does this need right now? And it's so amazing. We don't ask that question of ourselves or our bodies. And I think we let our minds kind of filter out the answers, or we don't trust what the first answer is. It can't be that simple, or that sounds ridiculous. But if you ask your body what it needs, I think most people would be surprised how intuitive our own bodies are.
Oh, yeah.
And then the final step, of course, is nurture, which is just to offer yourself compassion, or offer yourself whatever you can, if you can give yourself what you need in that moment to do it.
I love that framework. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I think, it's about, like, for me, awareness, but also like curiosity, because these experiences can be so overwhelming and so scary for a lot of people that even just being curious about what's happening can be really hard. Right. So being curious to ask the questions, to go in there, to surrender to it, to express it, and to just let it unfold. It takes a lot of skill and practice. I totally resonate with the expression piece. Like, even like when I do like breathwork stuff, towards the end, I guess the whole experience is about expression, and to sit there and scream. I feel anger in me. I really want to scream right now, but I don't know if this is okay to scream. And the vulnerability to just scream, a little bit different here. They really encourage you not to do that. But in breathwork, that's totally okay to really fully express your experience.
When I think of the word curiosity, it has a lightness to it. I associate that word with almost playfulness or childhood or innocence, this curiosity. So it's like, I want to learn about this. And I think some people get confused because curiosity doesn't necessarily mean analyze it,
right,
or solve it. It definitely does not, in my opinion, mean to come up with a solution.
Yeah.
Sometimes you recognize a feeling and you feel embarrassed or ashamed about that feeling, and you just have to name it and say, I feel this. And, maybe it involves another person and in a relationship, and you say, I'm feeling this way, or I'm feeling unsafe, or I'm feeling vulnerable. I'm feeling angry at you. Sometimes it's just a hard period there.
Right,
There's just nothing else. And you just have to allow that to be what there is and not force it to be any other way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing stuff.
It's endlessly fascinating. It's been a while since I've kind of like dove in. This was my first experience with ayahuasca.
Was it?
Yeah.
I
surprisingly.
did not know that.
Yeah. So, it's always called to me.
Wow.
And, it's surprising, obviously, being so immersed in the psychedelic world and having all these experiences and just talking to people all the time about it. You figured I probably would, but again, this comes back to listening to your body and your intuition. It's always called to me. And every time it called to me, my body said, not yet.
Wow.
And then I could almost hear the spirit of the plant said, you have to wait until you're a little bit older. The messages that I have to teach you, you need to go through certain things in your life before experiencing this. And so, in the meantime, like, I just continued to experiment with mushrooms and do a lot of breath work. But whenever I tried to pursue Aya, it was like, not yet. And so having patience with that and really trusting it and saying, this isn't the right time. How many times did I want to rush it? How many times did I want to go to some sort of underground ceremony? It's like something kept telling me, not yet, and really sit with that.
Wow. This is very much piquing my curiosity because, I guess I had made the assumption that this was not your first time working with ayahuasca. So now I'm very curious how this fits in to the puzzle of what you've created, and because of your extensive experience with psychedelic substances. Could you even ballpark how many medicine experiences of various kinds with psilocybin or LSD, whatever you want to, lump together? Could you even say in your lifetime how many times you've...
Probably like 15 to 20, maybe.
Oh, okay.
I've always been on the reserve side. Like that near-death experience really catapulted me into a world where like I just feel like I exist in it all the time. And especially after exploring psychedelics, like I'm always kind of
Tell me more about that. What's that feel like to be there?
Well, when it first started, it felt terrifying, you know, like being so cracked open and having a connection with something other than this. It's really hard to kind of just try to live a normal life.
What's that look like in practice? I mean, does it affect your relationships being cracked open? Does it affect your energy levels? Does it affect, for people who don't understand or maybe have never had a psychedelic experience at all and are trying to connect to that? What would you say changed after that?
Yeah, I feel like a lot. So
I know I ask really simple, easy questions.
They're simple, but they're also hard. I mean, it's a lot of self-reflection, right? So I don't have an answer off the top of my head. After my accident, I had a really hard time. And I think I explained this in the last episode, like just coming back to normal life and being like, I had a really hard time with school, just seeing how the system worked and just seeing like how people just get stuck in grooves and everybody's like, well, this is the way it is. And in my mind, I'm like, well, it doesn't have to be that way. There's something way beyond this of what you believe is to be true. And you can do whatever you want. Like this world is alive and pretty interactive. And why do we need to kind of conform to these traditional roles? And so that's been really hard, right? And I think even kind of cracking open with psychedelics afterwards, it's like you tend to live like somewhat of like a non-traditional lifestyle at times, or it's hard to like, I don't know. I feel like things are always changing. You're like in chaos all the time. At least for me, it's like, everything's just always flowing and changing. And sometimes I feel like I don't have a grip on anything. And then other times I have a super hard grip on stuff. I got it. And then, other times the medicine kind of comes in and be like, oh, no, you don't. Check this out. And I'm like, oh God.
Was there something that came up for you this week that most surprised you, or something that was buried really deep, or an aspect of your personality that you were like, whoa, I did not see that. I might have been hiding that from myself. Anything, or was it all pretty, I guess, predictable for you?
No, there was definitely stuff that came up. Well, like I said, kind of started this off, like that fear.
Right.
That was like, whoa, I never even considered that, because I kind of just paint this more euphoric picture around that experience instead of tapping into that scared young child who was terrified. Like that just completely slipped my mind over the years. So tapping into that, it was really interesting for the progression of this. Like I thought it was, you always hear these stories of how intense it is, right? Like, you go down and purge and you do all this stuff. And, you always hear these super mind-blowing stories. And my first 3 ceremonies were really gentle, really light, no purging. And it was really awesome. And then the 4th one just totally...
So last night.
Yeah. Last night was the one that did me in. But yeah, it's interesting to compare this experience to my previous experiences, and the realm, like that consciousness realm, feels always so familiar to me. Like when I was in it, I go, oh, I know this. Like I've been here so many times. Like this is what I connect to all the time. Has a different flavor, has a different spirit, but I know this world. And it was kind of like a nice reminder of, oh yeah, this is always here. And so that was kind of cool to like reconnect with that and feel not like, oh, this is it was a totally new experience, but also being like, this feels so familiar. Like I know this experience. Like it didn't freak me out as much as I guess, some people it might.
Yeah. I'm thinking about, you're like the integration guy. You you wrote the course on integration in my mind. And so I'm just thinking about, you're going home tomorrow.
Yeah.
And what are you prioritizing in the aftermath of this experience for yourself?
Definitely continuing to take some downtime and to create space for myself. I think that's super important. And to even backtrack, I was doing a lot of prep work beforehand. I was paying attention to my dreams. I was paying attention to different things that were triggering me, doing a lot of journaling. And so, the integration isn't always after the experience, it's before it. And I think a lot of people don't realize the anxiety coming here, right? To want to engage in this work, and, things are unfolding. I always view this as psyche, and psyche meaning soul. And not soul like spirit, but this kind of creative life energy that flows through us. It wants to, it's in touch with something. And psyche knows you're about to go on a big journey. And so it's sending you messages all the time. It's showing you anxiety. It's triggering you in certain ways to figure out what to work on. And so, I definitely did about a month of prep work, working, thankfully having a community in psychedelics. I had a friend who helped me kind of prep. So I really encourage people to even have an integration coach or somebody to talk to.
Does that friend do that work, or he knew a lot about it?
Yeah, she does spiritual emergence work. She was the one that I talked a little bit about on the last one, our Awakening Healers course.
Oh, amazing.
So we're both very into spiritual awakenings and supporting people through these processes. And so, she just offered some free time to chat. And it was just so amazing to see what type of projections were coming up, and I'm just venting and going off on this stuff. And it's I don't even know if I feel this way, right? But these experiences
are right?
Yeah.
Especially when you start the dieta and you're cutting out some of the foods that you're normally having, your little comforts. You're getting off all of the substances, even coffee.
That was the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Caffeine was so hard to give up.
Well, and I went really crazy with mine because I had so much fear going into this experience and a lot of resistance that my way of controlling that was being incredibly dogmatic and over the top controlling with my diet. So I went online, I Googled a mad woman, and I basically took every single list.
Oh, me too.
That I could.
I was OCD with it. Every second.
And I went on Reddit, sub forums, and if there was anything remotely contraindicated, I put it on my list. And my stepmom was trying to help me make food in preparation for this. She's like, so you can eat rice and could you have garlic? And I was like, no, I can't have garlic. Okay, can you have onions? No, I can't. I was taking it to the extreme. It was just I was cutting out all spices. I cut out even some veggies. Generally people are like, oh yeah, you can have most fruits and vegetables, just reduce avocados and certain things that are MAOI.
Yeah, tyramine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, but no, I just went I was eating a rabbit. And so what happened too, because I was only drinking water and some teas, but no caffeinated teas. And I stopped listening to audiobooks, podcasts, any music with lyrics. I stopped reading. And I definitely, I don't really watch TV or videos or anything anyway. I got so sensitive, man.
Mm-hmm.
I was just I remember in the morning, I went into the kitchen because I was staying for a week with my parents before I went. And my dad was in the kitchen watching a video really loud. And I was just trying to make breakfast. And I basically snapped at him. I was like, I don't want to be exposed to that. And he looked at me. He was like, what is going on with you? But I was having the wacky dream space like you talked about. Had one crazy dream that my dad and I have a beautiful relationship. So it was I have no idea what part of my psyche was expressing this. But I had a dream that I was in a car with my dad and I was being very controlling about where he had to park. and it was raining. We were in a movie theater parking lot. And I was like, Dad, why aren't you parking there? No, this is the space. It's the closest. What are you doing? And then he was just not listening to me. And so I started to get really frustrated. I was like, I wanted to be listened and I listened to, and I thought my way was the best way, and it just wasn't being acknowledged. And then in this dream, my dad kind of pulled to the back of the parking lot underneath one of those like stacked parking garages. And he just put the car in park. And I was like, Dad, what are we doing? Are we going to the movie? What's going on? And I was just like freaking out. And he slowly turned to me like a zombie movie. And his eyes were hollow and black. And a coy smile, like a twisted smile, spread across his face. And he looked at me and he said, Hallie, I love you. And then he leaned in and put his hands on my throat and started strangling me. This is a dream, obviously. So suddenly I'm being strangled. And this was a nap I was having in the middle of the day. This was not even...
Nap dreams are intense sometimes.
I think they're the worst. So I'm being strangled in this dream. And it's my father. And it's like this weird thing. I'm like, how could he turn against me and all this stuff? And in the dream, I fall backward as I'm losing air. And I'm looking up at the upholstery of the ceiling, this kind of like beige, on the top of the car. And I'm just staring at it. And I had the thought within the dream, very lucidly going, okay, I'm dying. Should I fight? Should I kick? Should I scream right now? Or should I let go? And I thought about it for a second, and it was like my whole life flashed before my eyes. And I decided in that moment that I wanted to die gracefully. And I let go and woke up from my nap.
Wow.
In that moment, I was like shaking.
Sounds intense.
It was intense, especially in that state too. Yeah. I called my brother. I was like, I don't know what's going on. I just had this dream that Dad strangled me. And he was just like, yeah, this is okay. Allow it.
Well, it's interesting too to hear that, and then the fear of dying. And when you're thinking about prepping for psychedelics, that death experience and the surrender, right?
Dreams are... I used to just think that dreams were these random projections of things I consumed during my day. And I think that at some point in my life, perhaps they were. But I don't know about you. I feel my dream space has changed completely, where I was having those sorts of dreams where before, oh yeah, I saw that person today and they were in my dream, or I saw that thing on TV and it was kind of in my dream. Now I'm just having these really long, super lucid, multi-layered, somewhat disturbing at times, somewhat blissful at times. It's usually not one or the other. Like I'll have these dreams with multiple layers where I'm feeling almost every different emotion at some point within this sort of landscape movie of what it is. They feel like they last all night sometimes. It's insane.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like I'm living an alternate life.
Yes.
I mean, I could go into some crazy dreams, but I also want to get back to the integration thing too, since we wandered a little bit, which is fine. I think it's so important to pay attention to this stuff leading up to any sort of experience, because psyche is projecting. It is working through the process. And so, kind of going back home, I'm already thinking about like, what type of lifestyle changes am I going to make? How can I continue? I've really been actually enjoying this diet. Like just completely changing my diet a little bit, feeling much better. And I was laughing a little bit earlier because I went so OCD with the research of like with the dieta, and so much stuff online. It's just, you get so much different information. Like most of the stuff I cut out, like, they served here at Solterra. Like I was reading like things like no cinnamon, no this, and they're serving like cinnamon with like oatmeal, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So I think it's also too to be like gentle with yourself. I've been doing a lot of writing here, and really kind of tracking my experience. And something with integration is, so the way that I approach this, I always say, what's your GPA? And this is more because we're in the education space. I thought it was like a fun little pun. So the way I approach this is, I think it's so important to get grounded first. So what are your grounding techniques? Like, what are self-care practices that you can engage in to feel like you're back in your body? You're just grounded, because these experiences can make you pretty like out there at times, right? Like you just were one with the universe. You experienced like ultimate love. Like you just understand how the universe works.
And now you're at lunch.
Yeah. Or you're back at your job. And so like, it's really important to take care of yourself, to get grounded. So making a plan for that, thinking about, how can I just get grounded first before trying to process all this stuff? So grounding is the G, and then P is the processing. And processing can look like a lot of different things, whether that is going to therapy and continuing to work with your experience. Maybe you want to process it through art, right? Writing, journaling. You could even do more stuff like breathwork to process some of the somatic stuff. Going to a somatic therapist and processing. Maybe you realized in a session, wow, I have so much trauma in my body. Like I need to go process that even more. So there's a lot of different ways to process the experience. And then, I have more questions than answers after this retreat, and every time I do these types of experiences, I'm never left with like, I know what I'm doing. It's like, oh, like whenever I'm in the medicine space, like, here's an option. What do you want to do, Kyle? And it's like, yeah, I have a choice in this. And so, really sticking with it and not needing to make like really big changes right away, right? Like, how do you work on just getting grounded, embodying the medicine, processing a little bit? I don't know if anybody's like me, I get caught up in processing loops. I go, oh, like I just want to continue to process it, make sense of it, and without taking any action on it. So then the A is, what's your action plan? How can you break down, I realize, like, for you said you started this podcast because of it. So it's like, how do you take a big dream, a big vision, and then break it down into small actionable goals? And when you see a big picture like that, it feels impossible. I was just at a conference back in November for spiritually transformative experiences. This organization called Assist, and they were birthed, I think, out of a lot of near-death research. And they presented this movie of like difficult experiences of integrating these spiritually transformative experiences. And the one thing, like, there was a lot of stuff from there of these people with near-death experiences. Like, I was just like, oh my God, yes. Like, I feel that way all the time. But the one thing that really stood out was when you're so cracked open and you see everything and the picture is so big, it feels so impossible to try to actually work on that because it's so big. You have this grand vision of doing something and then you're only one person. So it's like, how do we like just be gentle with ourselves and just show up doing whatever you can do, right? It's awesome to have a big picture, but it also can be so overwhelming to be like, I don't even know where to begin. Like, I don't know how to move this forward. Like, am I alone in trying to do this? Like, so, really just taking the time to sit with it. And I always like to think like there is a weird window of opportunity, right? Like you're a little bit open and, typically we say don't make any big drastic changes for 3 to 6 months, right? There's sometimes, that's not always the case, right? Like maybe something's been going on for like a while. You've been feeling this way for a long time. You get into the medicine space and you go, oh my God, I kind of need to execute on this. And when you're in that like more open space, that might be a really great time to execute on it, because you're like, I get it. I saw that. I need to let go of that thing. Versus like, if it's a new idea, maybe sit with it, because it can be like, discernment is really, really important when trying to like figure out what the hell's going on in this, because you can get overwhelmed by all sorts of messages and visions, and you go, oh, this is a really good idea. And I don't know, sometimes I think the plants and stuff, they like to throw you like little curveballs here and there and be like, do you really believe that? It's easy to believe everything that comes in that space, but it's also important to kind of check in with yourself and see what really resonates. So yeah, sometimes it is really good to act on things if you've been feeling a certain way for a while and it's not new information. If it's new information, take some time, sit with it, and just be with it. So
I like that. What's coming to mind for me is it's almost like a honeymoon period.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, it can be the opposite of that too. It can be really difficult, but speaking from my experience, or when you think about maybe that new relationship energy, when you're in a new relationship with somebody and you're just really excited about everything,
mm-hmm.
and everything feels really good.
Yeah.
That can be, you can want to pour all your energy
mm-hmm.
into that. And sometimes we pour all our energy into a new relationship and it takes off,
mm-hmm.
because we've laid the foundation and we've created a solid communication back and forth. And sometimes we pour all our energy into a new relationship or project or idea, and then we go, oh, this is not the person I thought it was.
Yeah.
So that's where that discernment comes in is, are you falling in love with this because this is actually a piece of you that's been suppressed and waiting to express itself?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you falling in love with this just because it's a nice idea to distract yourself?
Right.
Yeah.
And there's no good or bad between both, right? Because it's all medicine. Even the person that, we put a lot of energy into, and we go, oh, like, man, why did I waste my time? Right. But they brought you something too,
Right.
like,
it's
so
all medicine.
It's all medicine. And so, I don't think there's ever really right or wrong decisions here at times, but, we learn, right? And we only learn through experience. But the important part is just being aware of what you're learning during that time. Because there's definitely been times where I'm like, why the hell did I waste all my time with that? And then I look back and be like, I needed to. This person brought something into my life, or this thing brought something into my life that I could never have figured out unless it was there, right? So
wonderful.
Yeah. It's been a journey this week.
I bet,
Yeah.
and it will continue to be.
Yeah, the process continues to unfold. And that's also a really important reminder. It unfolds, right? It's constantly working. That was something that really sank into me, was like the medicine kept saying like, I'm always here with you, right? And I kept thinking about this book Peter Gorman wrote, Ayahuasca in My Blood. And it was like, this medicine is always with you, right? How can you tap back into it? And that's, I guess, coming back to like your other question a little earlier of like, how's that changed? It's like, I feel like it's always there, right? Like there's times when I can just tap into it and feel it and ride it. And I don't need the substance, because the way that I view this is like what the near-death experience has taught me, and like what my experiences with psychedelics have taught me, is that all the magic is here. Like last night I was just like looking up at the stars and I was going, this is fucking crazy. Like we're here.
Yeah.
And like,
yeah,
we are here. And that is the magic, I think. Like we were talking about birth last night when we were out on the star deck, and I went down this rabbit hole of watching a baby getting born. And I was like, what is it like to wake up as a newborn and come into being? And like, what is it like to be a parent, to try to teach this new life form to come into being? And like, have we ever been taught to come into being? Do we even know what that even is? But just thinking about the experience of being born and waking up into this world, I mean, what is all this? And this is, I don't know, in my mind, I think it's magic. And so, kind of being able to tap into the medicine and be like, it's all here all the time. It's just, can we slow down enough to tap into it and to appreciate it?
I love this idea of the newborn waking up, because I was having a conversation with someone just yesterday, I think, on the concept of sleep. And I was saying how strange it is that from the time we're born, we have this built-in biological phenomenon called sleep, where our bodies shut down for a period of time. We can't access really much of the memories that are happening, or that like time and space kind of just gets paused for us. Mm-hmm. And we wake up and it's so normal to us. Like mm-hmm. It's so normal. This is just a thing that happens. But if you think about that, just like from the outside for a second, that's weird. We lose a block of time and we're not concerned about it. And, it's also necessary for our optimal functioning. We can't do well without sleep. We can't repair our bodies. We are that newborn waking up every day.
Yeah.
Every day.
Every day.
And yet it's become so routine mm-hmm. that we forget about the magic that's all right here.
I think about that all the time. Like, when I don't know if you ever had that experience of going to bed perfectly fine and then waking up sick. Mm. And you go, I was perfectly fine yesterday. Mm-hmm. And it is like this new experience every day. You're waking up into this world. And this is something I would preach to, like when I used to work at
this is going to be good.
No, I'm laughing because I was trying to tell this story a little bit last night and I couldn't say residential.
This is when you were in the medicine.
I was in the medicine and I was just trying to explain my job, and the word residential, I just didn't understand it. So I'm just having like a flashback there laughing about it. Yeah. I used to work with at-risk teenagers, and a lot of them were coming in from suicide attempts and stuff like that. And, I would always say, like, isn't it just magical to wake up every morning? I know you want to escape this, but you don't know what's beyond this. Like, you get to wake up every morning. This life is painful. There's a lot of struggle here, but like, this is all we know. Mm-hmm. Unless you can remember who you were before you were born, right? Mm-hmm. Do you remember life before this came into being? And to wake up every day, it's a blessing. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I was having a lot of these thoughts last night. Yeah. Just like, wow. Like.
Yeah, totally. I'm also thinking of the book, The Power of Now, and Eckhart Tolle, and the story he tells about his spiritual awakening. He had a spiritual awakening. I don't actually remember, but I think he was relatively young and it was pretty sudden. And he talks about the morning after that experience. And he gives this beautiful vignette of the sunlight filtering through the curtains and maybe the fresh air coming through the window, and looking around the room and feeling that it was completely new.
Yeah.
And everything was fresh and everything was there just for him. Everything in the whole world was right mm-hmm. there. And I think we're hungry for that.
Yeah.
People are searching. We're searching, but we're lifting up, the rug, and we're looking in the wrong places. We're looking up, we're looking down, and I really believe it's all right inside.
It's all there.
Yeah.
It's all there. Mm-hmm. And I think that's like what some of this work, for me at least, is about. It's just remembering that, it's somebody here was chatting about being awake and how hard it is. And so it really got me thinking about like just this process of awakening. And of course, that's on my mind because of like also the work that I do with like spiritual emergence and this process of waking up. It's tough and it can really be like earth shattering at times. But I think it's what else are we doing here? Right. For me, I think it's like just trying to wake up and embrace it and enjoy it.
Sometimes I think about moments when I'm really failing. Like I was just sharing with you that over Christmas, I really felt like I was failing in some communication, and I was in so much pain over it. I was just like, I don't understand. I'm trying to use all the tools that I have. I'm in so much pain. I'm so confused. I'm so frustrated. And I was aware of it all and centered in it all and sitting in it all and wanted to have certain emotional reactions and just said, okay, how can I alchemize this? And it was exhausting.
Yeah.
And I almost yearned for a time where I could be in pain. and not be aware that I was in pain,
right.
because it was so right here and I felt every thread of it. Whereas, when I was younger and I was coping, using alcohol or relationships that weren't fulfilling and all of these things, it's like, now I can see that I was in pain. But if you had asked me during that time, I don't think I would have said I was in pain. I was just like having a good time.
Good time, yeah.
Right? So it's true, I think, what you're saying, that the process of waking up is basically like performing surgery on yourself every day. And it hurts, man. It hurts. But when you go away from it, when you're healed up, when you're sewn up, bit by bit, stitch by stitch, I think we're coming home to ourselves, and there's that sense of wholeness that we're reuniting with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wholeness. That was, yeah. Yeah. All my sessions just included like all this like DNA healing work, just seeing like my story being wove back together. And it just really, so yeah, it's reminding me about a vision quest that I had a while ago. It's kind of like a mild vision quest. It wasn't anything crazy, but I was studying with my shamanic practitioner when I was in Burlington, and it was like a week-long shamanic intensive for like a summer course, and we just went camping, and he just encouraged us to go out in the woods for like 5 hours and just be alone in nature. So I went out and collected things and kind of like was giving offerings out. And the one question that I had was, why are plant medicines here for us? And do we need them? And the message that I got was, life is like this spider web, and nature tears holes in our webs all the time. Storms come in, any sort of trauma comes in and rips holes. And our story becomes disintegrated, we become a little bit disembodied, and we forget who we are. And so we're not in the center anymore. We're kind of like all over the place. We're changing all the time because of all these different holes that are ripped in our web of life. And, so I asked Spirit, I was like, then what's up with plant medicines? I'm like, do we need them? And I got this message. You don't need them. Like, there are times when you can weave that back together, but sometimes you are so disembodied and you suffer such a deep amnesia that it's so hard to even realize that you're on the web and that there is a web in life. And so plant medicines are the thing that help you remember your story and remember that you are the spider on the web, so you can go back and weave your web back to wholeness again.
Wow. I love that.
Yeah, it was pretty profound.
Well, and then it becomes a choice. Like when you realize you're the spider, and you're the spider in the context of the web, and you know your place, and you know you can go over there and weave that and heal that, that's free will. And if you don't even know you're a spider, you don't know you're on a web, like if you're a human being, and I don't think any of us truly know what's going on.
No.
But if you've never had that perspective of zooming out far enough to realize that you're a piece of something bigger, it makes it really hard to know what to do. And you have these holes in your web that you're not even really awake to. I mean, but you feel that something's off, you know, like I think I felt that in my life. I was like, I don't know how to fix this.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's something to be fixed, but something's not right here. Something's missing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, it is always just such a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, likewise.
I feel like such magic comes out when we get to connect. And I'm so grateful that the synchronicities that be brought us together once again to continue this saga.
It's been great.
I'm sure there will be more.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so cool to be here at Soltara with you for the last 2 days or so. So yeah, I'm blessed to be here, and yeah, really just excited to reconnect again with you. And yeah, I just love chatting with you. You know, like I did a little like Instagram story, and I never listened to my interviews I do with people, and I went on a walk and listen, and that was a long interview. That was almost like an hour and 45 minutes or something like that, and I was like, wow, Hallie really brought out different pieces of me in that. And I was just like, that was a really good interview. So yeah, I appreciate your style and just how open you are in the space that you create for your interviews. You're really awesome with it. So
thank you, Kyle. Yeah. That means more than you know. So great to have you here.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you.